Hey everyone, and welcome to the Vault. These videos are a bit more informal, so not much editing here, and trying a little bit something different, doing the cam to start out with. Later on I'll get rid of the cam just so you can see what's kind of going on the screen in the game. But for now, hi. I do of course always have my cam up when I'm streaming, but so these videos, a lot less editing. They're meant to hold everyone over until the next guide video, but the idea is to focus in on something a little bit so that we're still spreading some knowledge and what have you. Which, speaking of guide videos, I want to give you guys a quick channel update. We got another patch today, of course, with balance changes and the expectations that we're still going to get more here in the future. In fact, Harada said in a tweet that because of the emergency, which I assume he means the pandemic, the balancing team is short-staffed. So they've only completed about a fourth or so of their intended changes. So because of that, the next basics guide is probably still a week or so away at least. I have to just decide whether I want to do the new characters yet or wait until we get more balance changes. I've also just been relaxing a bit, so not in the mood to do a lot of editing, and I wanted to play some other stuff and try to get a little bit ahead on school, which is coming to an end here next month. But the next guide video was going to be Leroy. I really don't want to make a guide video and then have to make like 10 follow-up videos because they keep changing stuff. So still in the air about whether he will be the next character guide or not. So just a little FYI on what's going on, and then it might be a minute for the next guide. Let's see, but I am still playing, obviously, and still streaming a day or two a week. So don't forget to check me out on Twitch. But I think enough of that. So let's get to some actual tech stuff. So we've been talking lately about various issues with frames as well as some practice mode stuff. So I figure let's talk a little bit more about both of those things. So first, let's talk about practice mode. So I want to talk a little bit more about the record function. Specifically, I want to talk about setting up situations. So the preset options in practice mode are really useful, but the reality is that they just can't account for everything. So you might have noticed in previous videos that I use the record function even in the guide videos. Since I don't have anyone to use the second controller for me, that's just how you got to do it. But what kind of situations would we need to use record for? So there are two that I think are really important. The first is frame specific. While you can set the CPU for certain things, the one thing that you can't do is set a particular frame situation. Since we just did the AK Basics video, let's stick with him for a minute. So if we look at down forward 1, we can certainly record down forward 1 with the purposes of just testing that specific move, but you'll notice as this happens that it's also -1 on block. So now I've created a situation for myself where I can test how things react to, a particular follow-up, in this case a jab. So like there, my jab beat him out because of the -1, my magic 4 did not beat him out. So it makes sense, but it's just, this is a generic situation, but just, keep that in mind that we can continually tweak those situations and set something up specific to what we're looking for. Now the other thing that you should be recording for is spacing. Now some of this you actually saw in the guide video. For example, I've recorded his ollie kick followed by a backdash here. If his ollie kick hits at range 0 though, he can't really backdash away from anything. He can still block, of course, which is what will happen if he tries to backdash, but it doesn't really serve the purpose of creating a whiff like what we would want. But if I modify the recording a little bit, I can change it so that it connects at max range. Now I have a different situation, but with the same move. Now I can test a wider array of stuff and situations. But obviously, these kinds of recordings are a double in that you're practicing against a premeditated follow-up, which the menu options don't really let you do. Okay, so that's really all that I wanted to say about the practice mode little thing. So that's pretty much it for for that portion of this video. Like I mentioned before though, we'll probably do a more robust practice mode video in the future, but that's a little ways down the road. So let's move on to another cool topic, which this was sort of setting up for: trades. So most people understand and know about trades through just luck when they run into it, or most of the time it happens during scrambles. For instance, if you land Armor King's jabs, he's at +5. Now let's say I want to use those frames to try a hop kick afterwards. It's going to beat most things, but at +5, it'll actually trade with jabs. Now, because Armor King's in the air right there, he gets floated, but your opponent still takes the launch. Now, chances are you've seen this kind of trade a bunch and didn't really think much about it, but there are a lot of really cool situations you can get from these kinds of trades, and like with anything, you can set them up. So on that note, since we're on Armor King, let's talk about his down 3 as an example. So they buffed it a while ago, so on counter hit it gives you a +9 and just sort of pins your opponent into the ground. But look what happens when I set up a trade. Now all of a sudden I have +15 and I'm still pinned to the ground. Now, because of the way that the hit stun operates, they can still block throughout the stun, but they can only block high because it doesn't let you do anything else. If I do a low that's 15 frames or faster, which basically in this case just means a toe kick, they can't block it. Now watch here as I try to do that. Now again, I'm trying to block this and it simply will not let me duck or parry because of that. Now that's free damage off of a really easy setup because as an Armor King player, you're going to be using 2-1 a lot. But let's jump to another really cool example. Now this one kind of made the rounds a while back, but it's a really good example of how powerful these trades can be if you're canceling a move with really long recovery. In this case, Negan's shove. Now normally if this hits counter hit, he gets +14 and goes into intimidation. You still get a free follow-up, but if we set up a trade, watch what happens. He's +55 from this kind of trade. And it's really easy to set up because the shove is I-14 and he's got a few things that leave him at +4, which in this case of course was a down 4-1 on hit, which is just a standard poke. It's something that you're going to be using a lot. But that is a massive amount of advantage, and unlike Armor King's down 3 example, Negan, as you just saw, absolutely gets a free launch off of this. Now we're not going to do a comprehensive list of good trades in this video. I just wanted to present a couple here, although it is on my bucket list because I love these kinds of setups, but this is mostly just to get you thinking about it because every character has trades that they can use like this. But it also feeds into what we were talking about earlier with practice mode, where you can use the record function to set up these sort of tests. It's also really important to remember what you're trading with. In this instance, or in this video, I've been using jabs, but there are a lot more setups to be found if you notice that your opponent is using something other than a jab in certain situations. However, you have to be mindful of how those trades will impact you. You saw with the Armor King example, the jab trade floated him so he couldn't get a follow-up. So, just kind of keep all of that in mind. In any case, I think that's enough for one vid. I think I've been chatting for long enough, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Reminder to like and sub to the channel. Also, catch me on Twitch. If nothing else, the VODs, can give you something to watch if you need some white noise, right? As I mentioned before, the next guide videos are on the way. I'm just not entirely sure how we're going to do them with how the new patch and potential future patches are going to line up. But anyway, I also got Twitter, Facebook, and whatnot. Links to everything in the description below. As always, consider supporting on Patreon. The more you support, the more it allows me to put out. No pun intended. Have a good one, guys, and stay safe.